because I refer to Drake as like the Shakespeare of hip hop. He understands the formula. He knows how to follow the trend. He knows. Welcome to the Morning Brew. That's the name I'm landing on. Yeah. It was like Sunday Brew, Brewing the News, What's Brewing. I'm just trying to find any freaking coffee reference possible. But if you're new here, my name is Marquisedavon, Keys Never Mark. I am the host of the Keepin It podcast. I'm also the wonderful co-host of Heavy is the Crown, which is a Bel Air recap podcast. I'm an educator here in Philadelphia. I'm currently working in higher ed. I was an English teacher. I studied theater, communications, all that good stuff. So if you need to know who I am, that's me. What this whole thing is about is me being able to really just enjoy seeing how pop culture informs society, informs policy, informs how we are, because I do believe that pop culture is a really easy gateway to figure out where the culture's value lies, right? And so how are people responding to things? Um, how is the conversation being crafted? When people are talking on a subject, where do their values tend to go? And this is real life conversation. This is also can be on the Twitter streets, Instagram, wherever it's at. But I just think it's a good gateway to larger conversations around like what we actually value and what we don't. So, welcome to the channel. You can tell I'm just starting this, right? And so today I'm gonna cover a couple different topics. So I'm gonna go with Mos Def versus Drake. My feelings on Ariana Grande's new song, Yes and Republicans blocking free summer food aid, right? That's also just super annoying. And then Lil Nas X and Katt Williams and the fear of being emasculated as a black man. So that's where we're kind of at. Again, if you want to subscribe to the channel, please make sure that you hit that like and subscribe button. Tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend. Follow me on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok at marquisedavon. That's MarquiseDavon. That's where you can find me. So let's get into the show. All right, so the first thing has been cracking me up. Mos Def was asked a question on a podcast around like his feelings on Drake and hip hop, and is Drake a hip hop artist? And Mos Def was just like, "Why would you do this? Why would you ask me a question like that?"
It's likable.
Likable music, yeah.
It's likable.
But is it?
And he was just really struggling because he was like, I'm trying to be nice, but I'm also not trying to be nice, and also just explain the truth about like what Drake represents in hip hop. I think it was just interesting because I refer to Drake as like the Shakespeare of hip hop. He understands the formula, he knows how to follow the trend, he knows what the next and upcoming sound will be, so he'll make sure to hop onto that sound, right? And so he's done that with drill music, he's done that with Afro beats, he takes on a new persona every single time, right? I am like, yeah, no, this makes sense. Like, this is how Drake exists. I think Drake is struggling to also accept his space in hip hop because to me, I'm like, Drake has turned into a walking meme. I don't know where Drake's latter part of his legacy is really going to go, but I do know the 2020s is something that I think is going to be a decline of, I won't say a decline, but a renegotiation of our relationship to Drake, right? I think a lot of us are just learning to accept that this is the artist that he is. And for me, he's an artist I used to have a lot of excitement around because I was like, oh, he has the potential to put out like a dope concept project. He has a platform. Nobody can touch him. And in my mind, he's an artist that I think is so big at this point that he has the ability to create a piece that is a conversation starter that might feel a little controversial, that may be a lot more conceptual. And I can also recognize like Drake probably doesn't want to do that. That man's been apolitical his entire career, right? We don't hear him talk around actual issues. When he does talk around issues, he was like, well, I put money where I can, and I don't see other people putting that amount of money. Duh, sir. You're a millionaire. right? And so I said, you're a philanthropist at best. Okay. I just think people just need to be honest around like what they think their form of activism is versus like what activism can actually look like. And so yeah, but I think Mos Def actually had a very pointed question, especially in regards to consumerism and how we are digesting the culture, because he was like, what happens when this empire falls? This empire is referring to hip hop. And I think that question is super important because when we think about hip hop turning into pop music, there has to become a formula for it. People want to continue to make money. People want to ensure that when they are pitching, can they replicate the same song over and over again? And so I do think that capitalism is killing creativity because people are starting to chase a sound rather than be who they are, right? And I think that's important to note because as we're engaging with this music, I don't know if people are doing it because they're passionate about it, but there are some people who are just doing it because this is their career that they chose, right? And great, love that. Have the career you chose. And I think the complicated part is that hip hop had so long been a genre of truth telling, or at least releasing perspective in terms of like where some people were at in the culture, right? And I think as it was commodified and more white people were able to understand exactly the power of hip hop and how to get it to influence the culture, they understood how to monetize it. And because of them being able to monetize it, there now has to become a formula. When the formula is then created, you can then just replicate on and on and on and on. And we're going to hear the same sound on the radio no matter what. Think there's that tension that's lying within hip hop right now because people are struggling with their authenticity. People are struggling with not being like this cash grab. And I finally got a chance to sit down with Doja Cat's project, and I get the frustration that comes around with fame, right? What are the concessions that are made? How am I expressing the business of this thing? How am I being digested? Whether that's by looks, whether that's by my sound, whether it's by, am I palatable enough for everybody? And so I do wonder what happens in this era of social media too, where people are able to build their own audiences, right? People don't need to rely on the label for much anymore. And yes, there are things that the label can provide that being an independent artist, it'll take a lot longer to get there. But in the era of social media where you can actually create your own community, that piece to me is important, right? And people like Ryan Leslie, who got off the grid and was able to do direct to consumer, I think he found it really good. And he found it early on, right? Of what does it mean to be able to get my music and take out the middleman? Because now I can get actually all of my dedicated fans, people who actually want to engage with my music and have my best interest in heart, right? We get to see that now with content creators. We get to see that now with independent artists, somebody like Adon Richard, somebody like Tinashe, have independent freedom, right? And so as long as that base is there, I think that they are gonna ultimately be okay. But I'm interested to see, because what I've noticed, like these are artists who have artistic freedom. And so their bodies of work may not be widely digested, even though some of us who are like their fans are just like, stop sleeping on these artists. But in reality, they have a fan base that is there to help, to chill, to listen to reach out, and to connect with faithfully, right? And so I think that's something to say as we think around the state of hip hop, consumerism, and the output of what we are saying and the messaging that goes out more and more in terms of hip hop. And so I know it goes through its eras, and Mos Def has talked about it previously around like if hip hop is in a daze, the people who are curating hip hop are also in a daze. And we get to hear that. We hear this through the era of conscious rap, gangster rap, when rap became braggadocious, when we heard the Southern sound go on and everybody wanted to replicate that. Now we're hearing more dance music and Baltimore club, Jersey club. All these sounds are like becoming a lot more popular right now. But it does make me wonder around, and it's something I think around like with my platform with due diligence is the lazy consumer. Are we so inundated with music that we're just consuming it and not thinking about how we're engaging with it, how it's investing in our psyche, how it is, what the messages are that we're receiving? Because something I was thinking around is like so many, and I think about it as a teacher, so many of my students listen to music without context of what was going on at the time, right? Um, and so it's like when you have a very particular entry point, you think that this is the full truth, but in reality, some hip hop is obviously fabricated because of it becoming the pop music, right? And because there's a lack of history and understanding of where music comes from and the genre that is uniquely Black American, right? Where we're at 50 years later and it being such a young genre, I am concerned with anybody's ability to truly put a lot of respect on this art form, especially because it is up for everybody's consumption, and how we have to have that tension of like, how are we digesting music versus who has artistic integrity and who's trying to make a quick buck, right? And so I think all those things kind of lie in tension with each other. And I'll probably have this conversation. I would really love to have this conversation with my boy Elijah, because I think he's just, the way his mind works um, will lend itself to articulating it in a different kind of way. But I want to talk about it. So we were out here. The next thing I'm interested in is, real quick, Ariana Grande dropped her new song, Yes and, to usher in AG7. And I was very happy with it. I know it's like down the middle for so many people. Some people are just like, I like it. Some people are just like, maybe it has to grow on me. But the visual, paying homage to Paula Abdul's Cold Hearted, I think that video is so freaking iconic. It is so good. Like, just seeing dancers be able to engage in very, very good choreography. It was given soft, it was given cunt, it was given Fosse, it was given Broadway. And I think people forget that Ariana is a Broadway girl. Like, she can pull out choreography when she needs to. And I think I appreciated her really referencing such a huge pop culture moment, right? I appreciate her going into this lane of dance and electropop, house music, and really being able to just talk around her, all the things that are being said around about her in this moment in time, and just saying, you know what, it's my effort era. I actually don't care what y'all have to say. I'm gonna be who I am. I'm gonna do what I feel like doing, and I'm gonna go from there. So I wasn't mad at her. I really enjoyed the song. Immediately, it makes me want to move. It makes me want to dance. I'd be like, yes, and say that shit with your chest. And because it made me want to go back into her music, and it maybe was like, ooh, I want to go listen to Be All Right. I want to go listen to some of her early stuff. Because I think Ariana can give us a really, really good pop vocal moment. I think she can give us a really strong, like, I want to see, I want her to give us like a proper bridge where she's like, you can just do some fun stuff, right, with her her vocals. But I highly recommend the video. I really enjoyed watching it. I watched it multiple times, and I just really enjoy, like, especially the theater kid in me really loves like the homage to Fosse and the importance of like sharp, quick moves. And it's all just like a very particular kind of form of sexy that kind of works, right? And so I really appreciated how she was able to embody this piece and bring people into her world. Um, and just remember, like, yeah, you may have all these rumors about me and may talk around this, but enjoy the music that I'm providing. And I really enjoyed what she really had to say in Yes and. So either way, I'm excited for Ariana to bring out her next era. You go do your thing. You go Gun Coco. You go Gun Coco. The next thing I want to talk about was really Lil Nas X and Katt Williams and the fear that Black men have of being emasculated. I was watching FD Signifier's video last night, around Katt Williams and the comments around like Black men in dresses are the only way to attain fame. And I'll make sure to put the link in the bio. FD Signifier breaks it down. I like when he does his signified B-sides. And it actually made me think around Black men's fear of being emasculated, and it has to be this idea of a sacrifice in order to gain fame. Like, that's a real easy barbershop talking point, but we know there are plenty of white men who have been in dresses, plenty of people who have done drag all throughout. Like, if you go back to Shakespearean times, women were not allowed to be on stage, so men had to be in these dresses. What are we talking about? What are we talking about? But again, I also just like nerd out about this stuff. So maybe it's not widely known that like women were not always allowed to be on stage, women were not allowed to be in entertainment, X, Y, and Z, right? And so as he was talking, what inspired my thought was also Lil Nas X and how he exists in hip hop culture and how he exists in the public imagination, right? And so when he came into hip hop, we had Old Town Road, so they were like, oh, it's a country artist, it's a troll, but it became one of the biggest songs. But Lil Nas X also dipped into hip hop, right? And hip hop is a male dominated genre through and through, even though we know last year was the year of the woman. These last couple years have been like women in rap, cooking everybody, cooking everybody. But Lil Nas X exists in this particular place because we get songs like Call Me By Your Name and now his new single, J Christ. It's crazy because he utilizes this religious he uses religious themes, right, in his music. And I think it's important to note because he's also a very openly queer artist. He goes from femme to masculine, and his persona has been evolving and ever shifting. But one day you may see him in a skirt, he may be twerking, he may just be I'm just Lil Nas X, like chilling, without all the extraness that comes along with it, which I live for, to be honest. Like, do what you gotta do, good brother. But it made me think around the reason that people, and black men in particular, have such a negative reaction to anything that Lil Nas X does, and somehow want to always run to religion. I'm like, y'all niggas don't practice religion any other day of your life, and y'all be sinning regularly. Okay? Y'all be doing some low down, dirty shit. However, when Lil Nas X does it, I think it is because of the femme nature of his public appearance causes black men to be like, and there goes another emasculated black man. And this is how he got his fame. And this is why he's so popular, because who would have thought that a black queer boy would be on top of hip hop with one of the most popular songs, right? And that bothers so many black men. I hear it in a barbershop, and there's like this infantilization of Lil Nas X not having agency over his public image, right? But the thing is, I think Lil Nas X actually has a very, very strong understanding of how social media works, of how symbolism works, and what his platform represents, right? And so even as he has the largest platform, he was able to come out. He was able to also have a certain level of safety in his representation because he understood what people were looking for. He understood what his audience could be, and he understood how to be able to push that. A lot of people don't like the spectacle, but I think there's like lessons to be learned in the spectacle and understanding why it makes people uncomfortable. I think Lil Nas X does a very, very, very good job of um, bringing in conversation, though he is taking a brunt of a lot of negative commentary that's happening about him, some bullying that happens to him. And I think as I listen to the FD Signifier video, it is this fear that black men have dealt with for generations of enslavement, white supremacy, other men emasculating black men, and all of this. Like, that conversation is important. But I think Lil Nas X raises that anxiety and is able to have such an emotional trigger on black men because they're like, yo, what did you have to do? What did they do to you? Right? And and it's annoying because it's like this balance of like, yo, you're having an emotional reaction to something that is not true. Data shows that it's not true. World examples show that it's not true, but you're still running with this narrative that Lil Nas X is emasculated, right? And it's like a weird space to be in. And so I do think that part of it plays into like the anxiety around black men wanting to maintain a certain level of masculinity, but I think it's also contradictory at the same time because black men want to be able to be their full authentic selves, but patriarchy reinforces that you need to be dominant, you need to have sexual domination, you need to be powerful, you need to have money, you need to be stoic, you need to be by yourself, you don't need to express any other form. And so we really still buy into this idea of what white patriarchy looks like rather than redefining what it looks like for us as Black men. And so it's interesting because in the same condemnation of Lil Nas X, Black men are also in the same token engaging in manosphere behaviors where I'm just like, wait, what do you want? Do you want to be able to explore all parts of yourself and not have to claim that a Black man's being emasculated? Or do you want to maintain the same standards and expectations that patriarchy has been telling you that has not been working for us for years, for centuries, ever since? So what do we want? Yeah, and I think that I'm gonna break that down a little bit more in a later video because again, these are just like hot takes and just like thoughts off the riff, but I do think that there is a certain level of hypocrisy that comes in when Black men are referring to Lil Nas X. I think it's a little bit of performative anger that comes in terms of Lil Nas X and people just suddenly wanting to lean into religion, right? And so I think religion is a space where they are able to also do the same kind of oppression, right? That happens to us that reinforces patriarchy, gender norms, a limited idea of what men could be and who they are and who we are as peoples, right? And so, yeah. Oh, yeah, there's something good in there. I'm gonna come back to that. And so Republican governors in 15 states reject free summer lunch programs or federal food programs that can help provide food security for at least 80 million students. And to me, I think it's important to also talk around this because it made me think around the pandemic. And yes, was there a lot happening in the pandemic and we were able to see a lot of bad stuff happen? Absolutely. Have we put a microscope on police violence? Absolutely. But I do think the biggest attack that happened in 2020 in the pandemic was the attack on education. And it's something that's still happening more and more. And so as I was thinking about it, they are attacking, critical race theory that they believe is happening in K through 12. As an educator, critical race theory is not happening K through 12, right? I know this just to be true, right? So let's start there. But it has been a constant attack on education and an onslaught really of what can be taught in schools, what books are going to continue to be banned in schools, how should we be discussing race, power, gender, right? All of these different ideas and sociological terms that are happening. And then what kind of access is also being provided? We know that schools are struggling to maintain their teachers. School leadership is actually leaving as well. Students are not performing the way that they used to. The level of rigor has been going down. All of these things exist right now in education. We're all trying to figure out, like, how do we ensure that our kids are not being attacked, right? And so for a party that claims the traditional family values and supporting the family and education and this and the third, it is another space that just doubled down on the fact that Republicans do not care. That Republicans will never get my fucking vote at all, right? So for this to be understood and what is so frustrating to me, poverty is a political choice. Poverty is not a personal decision. People do not choose to be poor because we understand that being poor is very expensive. Okay. And so I'm frustrated because we understand that students' ability in school is also attached to the resources, how they are being fed, their home life, their environment, right? So if a student comes in and they are unable to eat, they're unable to focus. If they're unable to focus, their grades will then slip and the frustration happens and then behaviors will be able to be exhibited and all of this. So we understand that students' performance is tied to their nutrition, is tied to their environment, is tied to the community that is built around them. But for 15 states to deny food and money, $120 per student, per eligible student, can be given to the household to ensure that their children are eating, right? For them to block that in 15 states and be like, actually, we don't want this. Like they had until January 1st to be able to do it, and it starts this summer. That to me is garbage, right? that to me shows that you are very punitive. It goes back into this bootstraps mentality of like, you need to work harder so your kids are not starving, so you can also make sure that your kids are taken care of, right? And so obviously they just want you to work harder. But in that token, I'm like, yo, these are elected officials who are shooting themselves in the foot, because it's not just black and brown people that are in poverty. There are plenty of white people in poverty. So you think these white kids also don't deserve food? And now, and I'm only worried about, us. So, and I'm just sensitive when it comes to children. Why deny the ability for families to be able to sustain themselves when you have the ability to say yes? Which is why we need to make sure that we stay engaged in the political process, because again, these are huge things that affect us. Yes, make sure that you are tapped in with your local policymakers, because at the end of the day, they are making decisions that also directly impact us, right? Federal, state, local. We need to be engaged in all different parts of this political process, because though I do not think people are going to willingly give up power, I do believe that at least on a local level, we need to create safety blankets for ourselves. And so by engaging in a political process, we are then able to ensure that some of our babies are taken care of. We are able to apply pressure. We're able to ensure, like, hey, if this person's not doing their job and not applying pressure in the places we need to, they're not coming back next time. I do absolutely believe that we need to be engaged in a political process, because I do think that is at least a level of safety we have so we can worry about the other issues within our community. But denying food to children, I think, is a different level of sinister. Denying food to students and families is a different level of violence. And it's one that a lot of us will ignore. And some of us will blame on individual families for being putting their children in circumstance and be like, well, they should have worked harder. Well, they should have done this. Well, maybe your bitch ass is an exception to the rule, right? Like, plenty of families could use help. And why are we denying families the ability to eat? That should be a basic human right. My politic is rooted in human decency, right? And so if we can know how to care for our neighbor, if we truly say that we care about everybody, then I do think that community needs to be engaging each other on social levels, on economic levels, on political levels, in order to really ensure that this kind of stuff doesn't keep happening. The Republican Party continues to show their ass. I do absolutely believe that the biggest attack from the pandemic was actually on education, and I am worried for our babies moving forward. I am worried around what happens when we become apathetic in this political process, especially in this big year, right? This is a huge election year as well. And so make sure that you are staying engaged. Make sure that you are keeping your foot on these Republicans' necks. Make sure that you are continuously pushing against, pushing your leaders. Now, I won't say pushing against, but pushing our elected officials to be able to make sure that they are still advocating for us, to make sure that they are our cheerleaders, to make sure that they are taking care of us, right? And everybody's obligated to different things, and there are still humans behind the policy makers. But you decided to get into the role that you are in service to the people. We elected you to do good by us. So let's make sure that the thing happens. Yeah, this is your morning brew. I hope you enjoyed this. I'll do more. I might refine it. I might just kind of leave it like this really relaxed portion. You see, I'm just when I'm looking for my thoughts, I just kind of look up here and everywhere else. But I hope you enjoyed this. Again, please make sure you like and subscribe to my channel. Like this video, leave a comment. Let me know your thoughts on anything that I talked around in this morning brew. Who knows? I'll just do this when I feel like it. But thank you for joining me. And all the glory that this is whatever. Thank y'all. I will see y'all soon. Peace.